To like flashy gold jewelry, which would glitter across the wide open spaces of their homeland. But Sarianidi and his team had little time to draw conclusions. The graves had to be excavated, and fast. Already, they'd amassed more gold objects than were found in King Tut's tomb. Moscow showed keen interest in the spectacle and sent the KGB to guard the dig. The Afghan army installed soldiers. Sarianidi cataloged the objects at double, triple the normal pace. There was more to discover, but time ran out. Sarianidi accompanied the priceless treasure back to the National Museum of Afghanistan in Kabul. But not long after, the Bactrian hoard disappeared as Afghanistan dissolved into chaos. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded. For 10 years, they battled the Mujahideen, Afghan guerrillas, in a war so costly it helped bring down the Soviet Union. When the Soviets were driven out, Afghan warlords battled over the spoils. Their shelling destroyed half of Kabul. In 1993, a rocket crashed into the National Museum, one of the last known homes of the Bactrian hoard. It was feared that most of its antiquities had by now been destroyed or looted. And it was about to get even worse. In 1996, the Taliban, a militia made up of Islamic fundamentalists, pushed back the warlords and seemed to offer peace. Yet one of their first acts in Kabul was to lynch the former Soviet-appointed president, Mohammad Najibullah. According to legend, he was the last person to lay eyes on the Bactrian hoard. Haji Mullah Kaksar was once the Taliban Deputy Minister of Interior Affairs. He recalls how the Taliban defeated chaos and crime with strict new rules.
Basically, the Taliban offered a law, the law of the Quran. For example, if someone steals something, we cut off his hand. And if someone commits murder, we execute him. These are the very orders of the Quran.
But the harsh treatment of women disturbed Kaksar. So did the Taliban's war on art, inspired by the Quran.
The Quran prohibits portraying living things. If a person makes a portrait of another person, on Judgment Day, Allah will tell him, "You have competed with me. Now give it a soul and make it come to life."
In other words, drawing or sculpting living things is an affront to the Almighty. Thus, Taliban radicals came to see the destruction of ancient art, like the Bamiyan Buddhas, as the fulfillment of Quranic law. And now the destruction shifted into high gear. At the National Museum, Taliban thugs smashed hundreds of pieces of art. At the presidential palace, they slashed forbidden paintings. The nation's entire film archive, some 50 years of history on film, began going up in smoke. And under an increasingly radical ideology, the Taliban began destroying lives.
The Taliban would say, "The Hazaras are not Muslims. We should kill the Hazaras."
Bamiyan native Mirza Asaim is a member of the Hazara ethnic minority. In the Sacred Valley, he witnessed the Taliban's campaign of ethnic cleansing.
Once, I went to a place. There was a mass grave of 200 people. In another place, there was another mass grave of 200. They killed 2,000 to 3,000 in all.
In one raid, Asaim claims, 2 of his children died of fright. He thought the Taliban couldn't hurt him anymore. Then, at gunpoint, he was forced to commit an act of infamy.
They came to my house. They arrested me in my house. They tied our hands. They came to my house. They arrested me in my house. They tied our hands. They tied a rope around our waists. They would take us to the head of the giant Buddha. They tied a rope around our waist and suspended us from there. We took drills in our hands and installed explosives. There was a terrible sound. When you looked, it was all fire, smoke, and dust. Whenever I see these empty places, I feel as if it is the day of my death. I was thinking, my God, when will my death come? When will they drop me down, kill me, and bury me here? What a horrible time it was.
It is this act of senseless destruction that the first major open-air excavation in Bamiyan's history seeks to heal.
I think my father will find the sleeping Buddha. He's sort of a genius, and I know that he knows what he's doing. And I know for a fact that he will find it.
Dr. Tarzi believes he's closing in on a statue that rivals any wonder of the ancient world, the sleeping Buddha of Bamiyan. After all, he relies on the word of a holy man who actually saw it, a Buddhist monk who's been dead for some 1,400 years. His name was Xuanzang, and in the 7th century AD, he trekked from China to India in search of sacred Buddhist texts. In 632 AD, Xuanzang had Bamiyan in his sights.
These people are remarkable among all their neighbors for love of religion. There is not the least absence of earnestness and utmost devotion.
After a long desert trek, Bamiyan must have been a vision of unsurpassed splendor. Xuanzang had arrived when the Silk Road oasis was at its zenith. What unfolded before him was a valley lush with agriculture and a vast royal city. But the valley's centerpiece would reward every arduous step of the pilgrim's journey of faith, the giant Buddha of Bamiyan.
To the northeast of the royal city, there is a mountain on which is placed a stone figure of Buddha, 150 feet high. Its golden hues sparkle on every side, and its precious ornaments dazzle the eyes by their very brightness.
Xuanzang arrives here, and he is blown away by the gold, by the flames on the shoulders, by the mask. That description has to be the one that was situated where we are today, the 55-meter-high Buddha.
But according to Xuanzang, that wasn't all there was. Somewhere lay a third Buddha, more than 1,000 feet long. Part scholar, part detective, Dr. Tarzi knew that to find the sleeping Buddha, he first had to locate the monastery that housed it.
To the east of the city, 2 or 3 li, there is a monastery in which there is a figure of Buddha lying in a sleeping position as when he attained nirvana. The figure is in length about 1,000 feet.
Could Xuanzang's description be true? If so, hidden under centuries of earth, the monastery wasn't giving up its secrets. To unlock them, Dr. Tarzi had to get inside the head of the monk and plot each step of his journey.
De la ville royale, il arrive au Grand Bouddha.
From the royal city, he went to the big Buddha. Between the 2 Buddhas, he arrived at the monastery of the ancient king. He left there and arrived at the 38-meter Buddha.
That's the smaller of the 2 giant Buddhas which once stood here. Then came the critical last leg of Xuanzang's journey.
Il vient de la ville royale.
He leaves the royal city and travels a distance of 2 to 3 lis. He arrived at the eastern monastery, the monastery where he found the 1,000-foot Buddha.
Pinpointing the eastern monastery's location has thwarted explorers for the better part of a century. Xuanzang's starting point, the royal city, hasn't been precisely located, and his unit of measurement, the ancient Chinese li, can mean 1/3 of a mile or 4/10 of a mile. That left acres of ground to explore. Tarzi and his team dug test trenches for 1 year, then 2. Still, no monastery.
The excavation from the first year was over there, where the wheat is. This excavation showed us that there weren't any buildings in this area. So we decided to not excavate any more in this area, but moved over there, where there are more relics.
Over there, at the end of year 2, Tarzi struck pay dirt. Outlines of an immense structure unlike any he'd seen before. Could this be Xuanzang's monastery?
This year's excavation is a difficult one. It's like an autopsy of an enormous cadaver. I'm a bit lost in the guts, because the cadaver is huge.
For Tarzi, one feature of the building provided a tantalizing clue. Structural supports designed to accommodate something of monumental size and weight.
Look, take a look in this area. There is 1 wall, 2 walls, 3 walls, 4 walls. These walls were constructed very intelligently so that they would support an immense amount of weight. I think that we might be at the terrace level, where the big Buddha's feet might have been. In any case, it's very exciting. We have to be patient. We're looking for something big.
Yet already the archaeologist has extracted art objects nearly as extraordinary as the Colossus itself. And these exquisite Buddhist sculptures raise Tarzi's hopes that he's found Xuanzang's monastery.
From the moment that I found this collection of statues and the other things that we have found this year, God willing, we are in the monastery where the 1,000-foot sleeping Buddha was found.